My in-laws stole $50,000 from a veteran's trust to frame me. I was the only one who knew where they hid $7 million. My name is David, 52 years old. If you live in this city, you've seen my face on billboards. Well, not my face exactly. My father-in-law Frank's face. But those words underneath, Parker Law, 25 years of victories, those were my victories. Every single one of them. I was the law in Parker Law. Even though my name never made it onto the door, family business, they called it. More like family circus, if I'm being honest. Let me paint you a picture of how I got here. 25 years ago, I was a hungry young lawyer with more ambition than sense. I met Alice at a charity gala, one of those rubber chicken dinners where rich people pretend to care about public libraries. She was gorgeous, confident, had that glow that only comes from never having to check a price tag in your entire life. Her father, Frank, owned Parker Law Firm, one of the biggest in the state. We dated for 8 months. Got married at some country club that probably had a waiting list longer than my student loan repayment schedule. I thought I was lucky. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Here's what nobody tells you about marrying into money. You don't gain a family. You gain a corporation, and you're the newest employee. Frank became my boss and my father-in-law, which is exactly as comfortable as it sounds. Every Sunday dinner was a performance review. Every holiday was a strategy meeting. And Alice, my beautiful wife, she became the bridge I had to cross every single day to get to work. Can't upset the wife. Can't upset the boss. Turns out they're the same people, and they talk. Frank was the face of the firm. You know the type. Perfect silver hair that probably cost more to maintain than my first car. Golf 10 year-round. Handshake that felt like he was signing a contract on your bones, but never lifted anything heavier than a scotch glass. He'd show up at the office around 10, schmooze clients over lunch, maybe sign a few documents, then head out by 3 for his tea time. The man had life figured out. He sold the dream while I built the machine that made it possible. Then there was Brad, my brother-in-law, Frank's golden boy. Brad had a title that would make your head spin, Vice President of Strategic Development. Want to know what that actually meant? It meant every 3 months, like clockwork, I'd get a panic call from Frank asking me to make a problem disappear. Usually the problem involved Brad, a casino, and an amount of money that would make your eyes water. The first time was back in 2003. Brad lost 40 grand in Vegas over a weekend. $40,000. Do you know how long it takes normal people to save $40,000? I got the call on a Monday morning. Frank's voice was tight, controlled. David, we have a family situation. Family situation. That's rich people speak for someone screwed up, and we need it buried. I moved money around. I was the only one who knew how all the accounts connected. Frank had a maze of LLCs, holding companies and trust accounts that he'd built up over 30 years. Most of them sat dormant. I created a business development expense out of thin air, routed Brad's debt through 2 of those sleeping companies, restructured it as a consulting fee, and made it look like a legitimate tax write-off. It was a masterpiece of creative accounting. I wasn't just their lawyer. I was their cleaner, the magician who made their sins vanish. Took me 3 days and probably 5 years off my life from the stress. Brad never even said thank you. Just showed up at the next Sunday dinner with a new watch and a story about his big win in Atlantic City. This became my secondary job. Every few months, Brad would implode in some spectacular fashion. Gambling debts, bad investments in his buddy's crypto startup. That time he backed his college roommate's artisanal beard oil company that somehow burned through 200 grand before anyone realized beard oil is just regular oil with marketing. I cleaned it up every single time. I told myself I was doing it for Alice, for the family, for the firm that bore my name, even if my name wasn't on the door. I told myself that loyalty meant something, that if I just kept my head down, worked hard, fixed their messes, eventually I'd get my due. Eventually they'd see me as more than just a help. What a joke that turned out to be. The work was brutal, but I was good at it. Actually, I was great at it. I was the engine that kept Parker Law running. Frank brought in the clients with his charm and his connections. I won the cases. I did the research. I found the loopholes. I negotiated the settlements. I was in the office at 6 in the morning and left at 8 at night. Weekends? What weekends? You don't build a reputation as the best firm in the state by taking Saturdays off. Alice loved the money. She loved the lifestyle, the house in the right neighborhood, the Mercedes in the driveway, her Birkin bag collection that probably cost more than most people's mortgage. She loved telling her friends that her husband was a lawyer. She just didn't love the part where being a lawyer meant I actually had to work. About 6 months ago, things started shifting. Small things at first. Alice would forget her phone in the car and have to run out to get it. Happened maybe once a week, then twice a week. Then it seemed like her phone lived in that car. She started working out more, which was great, good for her, except she'd leave the house in full makeup for the gym. Come back 2 hours later barely sweating, but she'd need a shower anyway. I'm not stupid. I knew something was off. But here's the thing about being the family workhorse. You get really good at ignoring warning signs. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. You're working too hard. You're seeing problems that aren't there. Besides, I had actual problems to deal with. Like Brad's latest disaster involving a boat he bought with firm money that sank on its maiden voyage. You can't make this stuff up. Dinner conversations became minefields. Alice would ask how my day was, but her eyes never left her phone. I'd start talking about a case, and she'd cut me off. David, you always talk about work. It's so boring. This from a woman whose idea of stimulating conversation was which resort in Turks and Caicos had better beach service. But I kept going. You know why? Because I had one thing that was mine. One thing that wasn't about Frank's ego or Brad's incompetence or Alice's lifestyle. One thing that actually mattered. Every Thursday night, I volunteered at the local VFW post. That's Veterans of Foreign Wars for anyone who doesn't know. Free legal consultations for vets. My dad was a Marine, served 2 tours. He died when I was 19, but he taught me something important. He said that honor isn't about what you get. It's about what you give when nobody's keeping score. These guys, these veterans, they got chewed up by bureaucracy. VA claims denied. Disability benefits cut off. Housing issues. Medical bills they couldn't pay. They served their country and got handed a stack of paperwork and a thank you for your service as they got shown the door. I could help them. I knew the system. I knew the loopholes. I knew how to fight City Hall and win. Frank tolerated it. Said it was good for the firm's image. Community outreach. Pro bono work makes you look human on the website. But he made it clear it was my time, not the firm's time. Nights and weekends only. Never let it interfere with real work. Real work meaning making Frank and Brad rich while I got a salary and a title that didn't match my contribution. Alice hated it. Absolutely despised it. She never said it directly at first, but I could tell. The way her jaw would tighten when I mentioned it. The eye rolls. The heavy sighs. Then she started getting more vocal about it. One Thursday, I was heading out the door. Alice looked up from her phone, from whatever very important social media scrolling she was doing, and said, "You're really going to that place again? I could go to that new restaurant with you. You know, the one that requires reservations 3 months in advance that she'd made without asking me if I wanted to go." I told her I'd made a commitment. She said, to strangers, to people you don't even know. She actually said that. Like serving your country doesn't earn you enough points to deserve free legal advice. But I kept going. Every Thursday. Like clockwork. It was the only time I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Something real. Not shuffling money to hide Brad's latest catastrophe. Not billing hours to clients who had more money than problems. Actually helping people who needed it. The guys at the VFW were real. They told it straight. No pretense. No performance. Just guys who'd been through hell and were trying to figure out how to live with what they'd seen. We'd sit in that back room that smelled like old coffee and cigarettes, even though nobody smoked anymore. They'd show me their paperwork. I'd show them how to fight back. Simple, honest, real. Last month, I helped this Vietnam vet named Carl. Guy was 73 years old, still working part-time at a hardware store because his VA pension got cut due to some paperwork error. Not a real error. You know, an error, the kind where they deny you and hope you're too tired or too old to fight back. I spent 4 hours going through his case files, found the mistake, made 3 phone calls, got his pension restored plus 6 months back pay. Carl cried, actually cried, shook my hand, and said I'd saved his life. That's worth more than every Birkin bag Alice ever bought, more than every Sunday dinner where Frank patted himself on the back, more than every fake smile from Brad. I came home that night feeling good, actually good for the first time in months. Made dinner, nothing fancy, grilled chicken, salad, tried to do something nice. Alice came down from her walk-in closet that's bigger than most people's bedrooms, sat down at the table, started scrolling her phone before she even picked up her fork. I tried to connect, tried to share something that mattered. I said, you know, I helped this veteran today, guy from Vietnam. He was about to lose everything because of a bureaucratic mess with the VA. Managed to get it fixed. He was so grateful. Alice looked up from her phone. Finally, some eye contact. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd get it. Brad was there too. He'd stopped by for dinner, which happened more and more lately. Probably because his own kitchen required him to actually cook or order food. And why do that when you can mooch off family? He snorted, actually snorted, like a pig at a trough, which was fitting. Playing soldier again, David? Real money is made here at this table, not in some sad little back room with losers who couldn't make it work. I felt my jaw tighten, but I stayed quiet. You learn to stay quiet when you're the outsider in a family business. When you're the worker bee and everyone else is royalty. You smile, you nod, you eat your chicken, and you keep your head down. But then Alice spoke. She didn't look up from her phone. Just said it like she was commenting on the weather, like she was asking me to pass the salt. David, please, not at dinner. Your little soldier project is so cheap. Cheap. 25 years. 25 years of 60-hour weeks. 25 years of cleaning up Brad's messes. 25 years of making Frank look good. 25 years of building a reputation that put their name on billboards. 25 years of mortgage payments on a house I wasn't welcome in. 25 years of funding a lifestyle for a woman who couldn't even look up from her phone when I talked. And the one thing I did that mattered, the one thing I did for myself, the one thing that honored my father's memory and helped people who actually deserved help, she called it cheap. I sat there, chicken getting cold on my plate, Brad smirking into his wine glass. Frank would have been proud of that $40 wine that I'd paid for through my labor, while Brad drank it and mocked the only decent thing I did with my time. Alice just kept scrolling. Didn't even notice she just put a knife in my chest. Or maybe she did notice. Maybe that was the point. I looked around that dining room. $12,000 table. Crystal chandelier. Original artwork on the walls. Everything perfect. Everything expensive. Everything hollow. And I realized something sitting there in that moment. I wasn't part of this family. I was an employee who lived in the building. I was the machine that generated their lifestyle. The engine they never looked at, because engines aren't pretty. They just need to run. I went upstairs after dinner, sat in my home office, the one room in the house that was actually mine, looked at the photograph on my desk. My dad in his dress blues. Proud, strong, honorable. I wondered what he'd think if he could see me now, living in a mansion I'd paid for but didn't own, reporting to a man I didn't respect, married to a woman who thought the only decent thing I did with my time was cheap. I didn't know it then, but that moment at dinner, that single word, cheap, that was the first crack in the dam, the first sign that the water was about to break through and wash away everything I'd built. Or maybe everything I'd let them build around me while I was too busy working to notice I was building my own prison. That dinner, that word, cheap, I thought that was rock bottom. Turns out I was still somewhere near the middle, and the fall was just getting started. 2 days later, I got a text at 7 in the morning from Frank, Emergency family meeting. 8 a.m. sharp. Conference room at the firm. 8 in the morning. That should have been my first clue something was catastrophically wrong. Brad had never willingly seen an 8 a.m. in his entire adult life. The man considered noon an unreasonable time to be conscious. But there he was when I walked in, wide awake, showered, wearing a suit that actually fit. Frank sat at the head of the conference table, Brad to his right, Alice to his left, all three of them staring at me like I was a defendant and they were the jury. No coffee pot on the table, no pastries, not even water. This wasn't a meeting. This was an execution. I sat down, tried to read the room. Frank's face had that fake concern thing going on. You know the look. The one politicians use when they're about to tell you they're raising your taxes for your own good. Brad looked nervous. Sweaty upper lip. Couldn't hold eye contact. But Alice was ice. Calm. Collected. Almost bored. Frank cleared his throat. David, we have a problem. $50,000 has gone missing. I waited for him to say Brad again. Waited for the usual script. Your brother-in-law made another mess. We need you to clean it up. Here's how we're going to move the money. I was already doing the math in my head, figuring out which dormant accounts I could use this time. But Frank kept talking. From the Jenkins trust account. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Jenkins, 90 years old, widow of a Korean War vet. The trust was for her grandson. Kid had cerebral palsy, needed round-the-clock care. That money was supposed to last him his whole life. It was sacred. It was untouchable. Brad slid a manila folder across the table. His hands were shaking. The transaction was made from your terminal. Yesterday at 7:30 p.m. to an offshore account in the Caymans. I opened the folder. There it was. My login credentials. My access codes. My digital signature on the transfer authorization. $50,000. Gone. 7:30 p.m. I was in the parking lot at 7:30. I'd stayed late finishing a brief. Alice had texted saying she was running behind. Asked me to wait for her. We were supposed to go to dinner. Some new place downtown she'd been talking about for weeks. I'd run back inside to grab coffee for the drive because I knew I'd be waiting a while. Left my terminal unlocked. Stupid. Careless. The kind of mistake I'd never made in 25 years. The kind of mistake someone could have been waiting for me to make. I looked at Brad. He had sweat on his forehead now. His tie was expensive but crooked. His eyes darted everywhere except at me. He did this. He sat at my desk, used my credentials, and stole from a disabled kid's trust fund. The realization hit me like a freight train. I looked at Frank. He was protecting his son. Again, like always. But this time he wasn't asking me to clean it up. He was asking me to take the fall. Then I looked at Alice. She met my eyes. Didn't flinch. Didn't look away. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't upset. She was calm. Too calm. And that's when I knew. She'd texted me to wait. She'd kept me in the parking lot. She made sure I'd run back in for coffee. She'd given Brad the window he needed. My voice came out wrong. Shaky. Desperate. Alice. Tell them. Tell them where I was. I was waiting for you. We were supposed to have dinner. She tilted her head, like she was looking at a stranger begging for change, like she was considering whether I was worth her time. Then she said the words that killed whatever was left of the man I used to be. David, I think it's time you leave. You've been acting so strange lately. This obsession with veterans, with those people. It's not healthy. We're worried about you. They'd weaponized it. The one good thing I did, the one thing that mattered, they'd turned it into evidence of my instability, my guilt, my motive. I help veterans. So obviously I'd steal from one. The logic was insane. But I could already see how it would play to the state bar, to the police, to anyone who didn't know better. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it. The audacity. 25 years of loyalty, and this is what it bought me. I said, "You're serious? This won't survive 10 minutes of forensic accounting. There are logs, digital footprints, timestamps. I'll demand a full audit. I'll subpoena every terminal in this office. I'll prove it wasn't me. Frank held up his hand. Slow, deliberate, like he was calming a dog. David, you can demand whatever you want. We'll call the police. They'll open an investigation. And while that investigation is ongoing, while your name is in the papers and your face is on the news, we'll make sure everyone knows about your history, about what happened in 2005. The air left the room. 2005. I'd buried that so deep, I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. Almost. Alice had been drinking. A lot. Girls' night out that turned into girls' night wasted. She called me at 2 a.m, crying, scared. She'd hit something. A mailbox. Maybe. She wasn't sure. She'd kept driving. Made it home somehow. The car was destroyed. Front bumper hanging off. Headlights shattered. I'd found her in the garage, hyperventilating, mascara running down her face. Frank had made calls. Lots of calls. Pulled strings I didn't even know existed. Made the car disappear. Made sure no police report was ever filed. Made sure if there were any witnesses, they suddenly had very short memories or very full bank accounts. I'd gone along with it. Told myself I was protecting my wife. Told myself everyone makes mistakes. But there'd been a hit-and-run report filed that night. 2 towns over. A cyclist. College kid. He'd survived. Barely. Broken pelvis. Shattered leg. Brain injury. The case went cold. No leads. No witnesses. The kid spent 6 months in physical therapy learning how to walk again. They'd kept the evidence. All of it. Photos of Alice's car. Medical records timing that matched. Witness statements they'd paid to bury. They'd kept it like insurance. Like a loaded gun in a drawer, waiting for the day they might need it. Frank's voice was surgical. Precise. Or you can sign a statement admitting to gross negligence. Agree to surrender your license voluntarily. Leave quietly. We'll handle Mrs. Jenkins. Make her whole. And nobody ever has to know about that night. About what Alice did. About what you helped cover up. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. It was checkmate. They had me trapped. If I fought, they'd destroy Alice. And sure, she'd just betrayed me in the coldest way possible. But that kid, that cyclist, he didn't deserve to have his life ripped open again. Didn't deserve to know that the person who'd nearly killed him got away with it because of money and connections. Didn't deserve the media circus, the trial, the trauma of reliving it. I could burn Alice, but I'd burn an innocent person in the process. That's the choice they were giving me. My integrity or someone else's peace. I signed the paper. Watched my hand move like it belonged to someone else. Watched my name appear on the confession. Gross negligence. Failure to maintain proper security protocols. Recommended voluntary surrender of law license pending investigation. Brad wouldn't look at me. Frank shook my hand. Actually shook my hand. Like we'd just closed a business deal. Alice checked her phone. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a problem they'd solved. I drove home. Hands numb on the steering wheel. Brain stuck on repeat. 25 years. 25 years, and this is how it ends. Not with respect. Not with gratitude. With a forged theft and blackmail. There was a car in the driveway. A Jaguar. British racing green. The kind of car that costs more than most people make in a year. I'd never seen it before. I walked in the front door. My suitcases were sitting there. The expensive luggage set I'd bought Alice for our anniversary trip to Italy. The one she'd spent 3 weeks researching, because the leather had to be exactly the right shade of cognac. Packed, ready, waiting for me like room service at a hotel checkout. Alice came down the stairs. She was adjusting an earring, pearl, the ones her grandmother left her, the ones she only wore for important occasions. She looked good, too good for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Hair done, makeup perfect, dress that probably cost what I used to make in a week when I started at the firm. Behind her came a man, tall, late 40s, salt and pepper hairstyled like a news anchor, suit that cost at least 10 grand, shoes that probably cost more than my first car. He had his hand on the small of Alice's back. Proprietary. Comfortable. Like he'd done it 1,000 times before. I heard myself ask, "Who is this?" Alice smiled. Actually smiled. "David, this is Robert. My divorce attorney. And, well, not just that. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. He's been helping me understand my options." Options? Like I was a stock she was considering selling. Like our marriage was a bad investment she needed to liquidate. Robert stepped forward, extended his hand like we were at a networking event. He checked his watch. Patek Philippe probably cost more than that kid's medical bills back in 2005. His voice was smooth. Practiced. "David, I've heard a lot about you. I want you to know this isn't personal. It's just business. The house is held in a trust established by Frank. Alice is the beneficiary. Given the circumstances with your employment termination and the, allegations, it's best if you vacate the premises by end of business today." He talked like a press release. Clinical. Detached. Like my entire life was just another appointment on his calendar that he needed to wrap up before lunch. Alice touched his arm. Gentle. Intimate. "Robert says that given your gross negligence admission, I'm entitled to keep all marital assets. The house, the cars, the investment accounts. He says you'll be lucky to walk away with your clothes." I looked at her, really looked at her, tried to find the woman I'd married 25 years ago, the woman I'd worked myself to exhaustion for, the woman I'd covered up a felony for. She wasn't there. Maybe she'd never been there. Maybe I'd just been too busy working to notice I'd married a stranger. I picked up my suitcases. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd bought them for her. Now I was using them to move out of a house I'd paid for, a house I'd never owned. Robert called after me as I walked out. "Oh, David, one more thing. Alice and I are planning a trip to Napa next month. For the wedding. Small ceremony. Family only. You understand." I understood. I understood perfectly. This wasn't a betrayal. This was a hostile takeover. They'd stolen money from a disabled kid's trust fund, framed me for it, blackmailed me with a 20-year-old secret, destroyed my career, taken my home, and now they were getting married in wine country. The $50,000 wasn't about money. It was never about money. It was the price they were willing to pay to erase me from their lives without having to split assets. It was the cost of making me disappear. I'd spent 25 years being their fixer, their cleaner, their magician, the man who made problems vanish. And now I was the problem. So they'd made me vanish. I put the suitcases in my car. The car I'd be lucky to keep for another month before the repo man came calling. Looked back at the house one last time, at the life I'd built, at the prison I'd paid for. Alice stood in the doorway, Robert's arm around her waist. She didn't wave, didn't say goodbye, just closed the door, like I'd never been there at all. I drove, didn't know where I was going, didn't matter. There was nowhere to go, no job, no home, no family, no career. 25 years of my life erased in one morning. And the worst part? They'd used my own goodness against me, my loyalty, my desire to protect people who didn't deserve protection. I'd always thought that doing the right thing mattered, that honor meant something, that if you work hard and stayed loyal and played by the rules, eventually you'd be rewarded. Eventually people would see your worth. I was wrong. They'd seen my worth. They'd calculated it down to the dollar. 50,000. That's what it cost to destroy me. That's what my loyalty was worth to them. Not even enough to pay off one of Brad's casino debts. A month passed. The lawyer from the billboards now lived in a room above a bar called the Irish Viking. It smelled like stale beer and broken dreams. My bank accounts were frozen pending the divorce proceedings. I'd filled out an application for Uber Eats, but couldn't bring myself to hit submit. The humiliation was physical, like my body was rejecting the reality of what my life had become. I spent most days staring at a crack in the ceiling, mapping it like it was a road out of this mess. It wasn't. It was just water damage from a leaky pipe that the landlord would never fix because this wasn't the kind of place where things got fixed. This was the kind of place where things came to die. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. What was the point? If it was a creditor, I had nothing. If it was Alice's lawyer, I had even less. But I answered anyway. Maybe out of habit. Maybe out of hope that somewhere in this burning wreckage of my life, there was something worth salvaging. The voice on the other end was rough, gravelly, like it had been filtered through 40 years of cigarettes and black coffee. David? This Terry, manager at the VFW Post. I sat up. Terry. I hadn't heard from anyone at the VFW since everything went down. Figured they'd heard the rumors. Figured they wanted nothing to do with the disgraced lawyer who'd stolen from a veteran. Figured I was toxic. Terry kept talking. I heard what happened to you. What they did. Bunch of cowards. Listen, I got an emergency here. Old Gunny Henderson, 85 years old. Marine. Vietnam. 2 tours. They're evicting him tomorrow. Some reverse mortgage scam. Bank says he owes them $200,000. He's going to be on the street. My chest tightened. Gunny. I knew him. Quiet guy. Always sat in the back corner. Never talked about the war. Just nodded and drank his coffee and listened to the younger vets tell their stories. He'd lost his wife 3 years ago. Cancer. The house was all he had left. I said, Terry, I can't. My license is suspended. I'm not a lawyer anymore. I can't represent him. Terry's voice cut through like a drill sergeant. I don't need a lawyer. I need you. You're the only one who understands this legal garbage they're throwing at him. Just look at the papers. As a friend. Please. I went. What else was I going to do? Sit in my room and count ceiling cracks? At least this was something. At least this mattered. I drove my car that would probably be repossessed next month. Parked outside the VFW. Walked in like I had a right to be there. Like I wasn't a fraud and a failure, and everything they'd accused me of being. Gunny was sitting at the table in the back room, the one we use for consultations. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, like the weight of this was physically crushing him. The papers were spread out in front of him, a stack 6 inches high. Legal jargon designed to confuse and intimidate, the American way of screwing over people who can't afford to fight back. Terry handed me the documents. I started reading. It was predatory, textbook predatory lending. They convinced Gunny to take out a reverse mortgage, told him he could stay in his house for life, never have to make payments. The money would just come out of the home's value when he died. Standard pitch. Sounds great until you read the fine print. The fine print said if he missed a single property tax payment or let the homeowner's insurance lapse, the entire loan became due immediately, $200,000, payable in full within 30 days, or they take the house. And buried in page 47 of the document packet was a notice that his insurance had been canceled 6 months ago, a notice they'd sent to an address where he hadn't lived in a decade, his wife's old P.O. box, the one they closed after she died. It was fraud. Clear, obvious, prosecutable fraud. But they were counting on an 85-year-old Marine not having the resources or knowledge to fight it. They were counting on him just rolling over and accepting that he'd be homeless because that's what people do when the system is designed to crush them. They were wrong. I picked up my phone, called the bank's legal department, got some junior associate who probably graduated law school 3 months ago and thought he was hot stuff because he worked for a big institution. I said, my name is David. I'm calling on behalf of Sergeant Henderson regarding the foreclosure proceeding on his property. I need you to get a pen because you're going to want to write down the federal statute you just violated. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry. Who did you say you were? I repeated myself. Slower this time. Let every word land. Then I continued. You violated the Truth in Lending Act by failing to provide proper notice of cancellation rights. You sent required documentation to an address you knew was invalid. You initiated foreclosure proceedings without proper notification under the Service Members Civil Relief Act. And you did all of this to a combat veteran who served his country for 6 years while you were probably still in diapers. More silence. Then, let me transfer you to my supervisor. I said, you do that, And tell your supervisor that if I don't have a representative here within 1 hour with a full cancellation of this foreclosure and a written apology, my next call is to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, followed by every news outlet in the state. I'm sure they'd love to run a story about how your bank is stealing homes from elderly veterans right before the holidays. The voice on the other end changed. Got tight. Professional. We'll have someone there in 40 minutes. I hung up. Terry was staring at me. Gunny was staring at me. I just threatened a major financial institution with federal prosecution while having no legal authority to practice law. It was probably the most illegal thing I'd done since helping Alice cover up that hit and run. But it felt good. It felt right. Terry said, "You still got it, kid." That's when the door opened. A woman walked in. Late 70s, maybe early 80s. But age on her was like expensive wine. It made her more refined, not weaker. She wore a coat that probably cost more than my car. Cashmere. Perfectly tailored. Hair silver but styled. Not the kind of woman who just happened to wander into a VFW hall on a Tuesday afternoon. Terry straightened up. Actually stood at attention. "Mrs. Elausen, we weren't expecting you." Her voice was quiet, but it carried weight. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud, because people had learned to listen. I heard Gunny was having trouble. My late husband served with him. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I came to make sure the bank wasn't trying to pull something. Terry gestured to me. "Already handled, ma'am. David took care of it." She looked at me, really looked at me. I was unshaven, wearing a sweater with a hole in the elbow, living above a bar. Definitely not the picture of success. She said, "You're a lawyer?" I said used to be. She nodded once. "You're David, the one who worked at Parker Law." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. My foundation is their largest client. They told me you'd retired. Health issues, they said. I had nothing left to lose. No reputation to protect. No career to salvage. No reason to keep their secrets anymore. So I told her the truth. "Mrs. Elausen, those health issues are named Brad Parker. They accused me of stealing $50,000 from a veteran's widow to cover up his gambling debts. Framed me for it. Used my terminal while I was in the parking lot waiting for my wife. Then blackmailed me into taking the fall." She didn't look surprised. Didn't look shocked. Just nodded slowly. Like I confirmed something she'd already suspected. I always told Frank his son had a terrible poker face. "Thank you for helping Gunny. He's family to me." She turned to leave. I thought that was it. Thought I'd just torpedoed whatever tiny chance I might have had at redemption by bad-mouthing her law firm to her face. Thought I'd watch her walk out and never see her again. But she paused at the door. "Look back. David, do you have a business card?" I almost laughed. "A business card. Yeah, let me just grab one from my collection of things I don't have anymore. Right next to my dignity and my law license." I said, "No, ma'am, not anymore." She pulled out her own card, wrote something on the back, handed it to me. "Call me tomorrow. 9 a.m. We should talk about your future." Then she left. The room felt different after she was gone. Like the air pressure had changed. Terry was grinning. Gunny was shaking my hand. The bank representative showed up 20 minutes later with a cancellation letter and an apology, so rehearsed it probably came from their legal department's crisis management playbook. I drove back to my room above the bar, looked at the card. Eleanor Elausen, Elausen Family Trust. Her personal cell number written on the back in handwriting that looked like it had been taught in a different century, when people still believed penmanship mattered. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at that card, wondering what kind of future a woman worth hundreds of millions saw in a disgraced lawyer living above a dive bar, wondering if this was pity or charity or something else entirely. I called at 9 a.m. exactly. She answered on the first ring. "David, I've been doing some auditing, looking into Parker Law's handling of my foundation's accounts. You were right about Brad being careless. But Frank is smarter. They've been hiding money. I need someone who knows where to look. An insider. Someone who built the system. I'll pay you as a consultant. I said, Mrs. Alausen, I'll do it for free. They destroyed my life. I want to watch them burn. We met at her office, not some corporate building. Her home, a brownstone that probably predated the Civil War. Old money, real money, the kind that doesn't need to flash itself because everyone already knows it's there. She showed me the financial statements from Parker Law, years of them. I started reading. And then I saw it, the pattern. It was beautiful in its simplicity and horrifying in its audacity. They were using the same playbook they'd used with Gunny, taking money from her foundation trust. Frank would code it as real estate development expenses. Brad would run it through shell companies. The same bank that tried to foreclose on Gunny was laundering it through fake mortgage companies, then offshore accounts. The Caymans, Bermuda, places where money goes to disappear. I said, they're using the reverse mortgage scam model. But instead of targeting veterans, they're targeting you, your foundation. They've been bleeding it for years. That $50,000 from Mrs. Jenkins's trust, that wasn't about covering Brad's debts. That was a test run. They were perfecting the system, seeing if anyone would notice. I noticed, so they got rid of me. Mrs. Alausen's face didn't change, but her eyes did. They got colder, harder, like watching water turn to ice. How much? I did the math. Pulled up the documents I'd memorized from 25 years of building their empire. I said conservatively, over the past 5 years, $7 million. Maybe more. You'll need a full forensic audit to know for sure. She made one phone call. Her accountant, a firm I'd heard of but never worked with. The kind that handles sovereign wealth funds and billionaires who need to hide assets from divorce lawyers. She gave them access to everything. Told them to burn the midnight oil. Told them money was no object. Find it all. 1 week later, it hit the news. Every financial channel. Bloomberg, CNBC, Wall Street Journal. Alausen Family Trust, valued at $120 million, was severing all ties with Parker Law Firm due to gross financial improprieties and potential fraud. $120 million. That wasn't 70% of Parker Law's business. That was 90%. They'd built their entire reputation on being the firm that managed the Alausen Trust. That was their calling card, their proof of legitimacy. Take that away, and they were just another mediocre firm in a city full of lawyers. The firm collapsed in 48 hours. Frank was under investigation by the state bar. Brad was facing criminal charges, wire fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, the kind of charges that come with federal prison time. The bank that helped him got hit with a federal investigation, systematic mortgage fraud, predatory lending, elder abuse. Saving Gunny had started a chain reaction that was burning down an entire corrupt ecosystem. But what about Alice? Turns out Robert wasn't just her divorce lawyer and boyfriend. He was a consultant, one of those guys who makes millions giving rich people advice on how to avoid taxes and hide assets. He'd been getting paid out of the Alausen Trust, hundreds of thousands a year. When that money disappeared, so did Robert. The Jaguar got repossessed. The house that was in Frank's trust got frozen as an asset in the fraud investigation. Alice went from planning a wine country wedding to looking for a job. The last thing I saw. Last week I was having lunch with Mrs. Alausen at the Four Seasons. We were discussing foundation strategy, investment opportunities, how to make sure her money actually went to helping veterans instead of lining the pockets of con artists. And there she was, Alice, carrying a water pitcher, wearing a server's uniform. She didn't look up when she came to our table, but I saw her hands shake when she poured my water, saw the way she held her breath like if she just stayed invisible, maybe I wouldn't notice her. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. The universe had already spoken. Mrs. Alausen called me the next day. She said, David, I'm consolidating my assets, and the assets of several friends. About $400 million total. I'm creating a new family office. I need someone to run it, not a lawyer, a leader, someone who knows the difference between what's legal and what's right. Someone who'll fight for an old Marine's house like it's $1 billion trust. Because at the end of the day, they're worth the same thing. They're both about honor. I became CEO of the Lausen family office. My salary? Let's just say I could buy what's left of Parker Law with pocket change. If there was anything left to buy, last I heard they were selling office furniture to pay legal bills. My ex-wife used to laugh at my cheap volunteer work, told me I was wasting my time. She didn't understand something fundamental. In law, there's a rule. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. They broke a worse rule. They betrayed the person who knew the answers to all their questions. The person who built the machine they used to steal. The person who knew every account, every shell company, every dirty trick. Because I created most of them. They forgot that honor is the one asset you can't steal, can't fake, can't buy with offshore accounts and Patek Philippe watches and Jaguars in the driveway. And it's the only asset that actually matters. Because when everything else burns down, when the money's gone and the reputation's destroyed and the friends disappear, honor is what lets you look at yourself in the mirror. I help veterans now. Full time. It's what the foundation does. We fight predatory lenders. We take on the VA when they try to screw over the people who served. We make sure that guys like Gunny get to stay in their homes. And we're good at it because I know every trick. I built half of them. Turns out that cheap volunteer work wasn't so cheap after all. It was the most expensive thing I ever did. It cost me a marriage I didn't want, a career that was killing me, a family that never respected me. And it bought me something I'd forgotten existed, my soul back. My dad was right. Honor isn't about what you get. It's about what you give when nobody's keeping score. The scoreboard takes care of itself.